If you had to pick, would it be Plato or Jesus? Hey, thanks for joining us for this episode of Midweek Motivation with the Westside podcast. I'm so excited to welcome Mary Jo Sharp, assistant professor at Houston Christian University, to talk with us a little bit today about the historicity, the authority, the reliability of the Bible. Like, can you trust the Bible? We were talking about that this past weekend at Westside Community Church, where I'm the pastor. My name is Gabe Kolstad, and I'm just grateful to spend a few minutes with you, kind of diving a little deeper on some motivational thoughts about what it means to have faith and to try to grow in that faith. Hi, Mary Jo. How you doing?
Hi, Gabe. I'm doing really well. Thank you. Awesome.
And thank you so much for just taking a little time out of your life to bounce in on this topic.
Yeah. No, and by the way, Plato, should we read, who's more important, Plato, Jesus? I remember one time I had a friend of mine, a colleague of mine say, so they had a parent upset that the kid was reading Plato instead of just reading the Bible in this classics program. And she said to the parent, why would I let your kid read Plato or the Bible, if they're not, why would I let your kid read the Bible if they can't read Plato? And I was like, oh my goodness, that right there, that says what, the authority and the trustworthiness of the Bible that we need to instill to people about, the difference there.
Yeah, that's really good. Well, I know that you've done a lot of work in topics like this, and you do regularly. Why do you think, or what's your perspective on this topic of, is the Bible reliable?
I love this topic because when I grew up Christian, and I'm from the Pacific Northwest, and when I became a Christian and I started to have doubts about my faith, according to some of the hypocrisy, it was in relationship to some of the hypocrisy of the Christians that I was seeing. This was a question that I had to answer: is why? I was like, well, I believe I had a real experience with God, that brought me to salvation and trust in Him. But why do I say I trust the Bible? And I actually came up empty. I didn't have any reason for why I thought I, could trust the Bible. And so over that time, I had to dig into, well, what do we mean when we say the Bible's reliable, and what actually does that entail? And so I kind of dove in right where I saw you were going when you did your sermon last Sunday about, let's just even start with the Bible as a historical text, right?
Okay.
It's a physical text that has come down to us through history. So it's not like some magic fairy just poof gave this to somebody. This is a text that was written, between 1500 and 1600 years. So long time writing. You have around 40 authors writing it. And it gets passed down to us through history. So it is an ancient text. That seems so silly, right? Say that.
Obvious almost, but maybe not.
But I think maybe not. Because I think people are like, well, wait a minute. What's the difference between, the Christian text and maybe Mormonism or Islam or something like that? And sometimes you're dealing with one person receiving a revelation and it being, written down or passed down from that person. That's not the case with the Bible. And I've told my husband, this was a sticking point, and it kind of angered me because I wanted Christianity to be false when I was upset with the Christians. And so here I've got this, you're telling me the Bible was written over 15 to 1600 years by all these different authors. Well, that does not make a good case for, I can just reject it because this one guy wrote it down, and so he wasn't trustworthy.
Oh, that's such a good point. Wow.
So in there, we don't think about it being an ancient historical document as leading to that conclusion, but I think it should. I think we need to take that sort of, it as an ancient physical text that we have. We need to take that very seriously and say, well, what is this thing? What is it that we have? And I said thing, and some people are going to be like, oh no, you're talking about the holy word of God. But I was raised a naturalist, and so my language tends to be a little more like that. But that's an important piece of this. So what is the Bible? I think would be a starting point of, it's this 66 books that were written by these around 40 authors. And yet in that great span of time, it has such consistency of message, and morality and all of these things that are so important. But it's also the message that God is trying to communicate to us. It's the grand narrative of metaphysical reality. So I'm going to throw a professor term in there.
Okay. Yeah, there is a professor term for sure. I
Yeah.
love it.
So what's real? What if you might say, what's the really real? And the Bible is actually giving us a story about where the universe come from. What's the really real? What's at the base of the universe? Creation, how did it get here? So there's a lot of creation myths out there, but the scriptures actually are the only one that tell us that God made it. He just spoke it into being and it was done. There's no battle. There's no great cosmic good and evil warring with each other. And out of that comes creation. It's just God said it. It's very simplistic almost in its presentation of how we were made.
Well, and I mean, I think that's in some ways why it's debated about like, this can't be how it happens. It's too simple. It's too simplistic. There's got to be more process involved. And I realize there's lots of views about that too. But even within Christianity, even within, accepting the Bible as God's word, there's a lot of different, interpretations about what the process was, right?
Yeah.
But I think that invokes that kind of skepticism to go like, wait a sec, and then people look into it a little further.
Yeah, it's got to be harder than that, right?
Yeah.
If you look at the creation myths, they are a lot harder. There's a lot more detail. There's a lot of stuff that goes on. I think when you look back at what was the author trying to communicate, it's that none of that stuff is real. The reality is you've got a being at the origin of the universe who could speak it into being. So that was there's sort of a polemic in there saying it's not all of this. And that's interesting to me because the Christian creation story actually aligns with what we know of science, that the universe had a beginning. So it's really great as far as just treating it when you look at what it is as an ancient text. And I think that's going to be a hard point for some people to really comprehend the value there. But then you've got, and you sort of presented this, actually, I didn't hear all of it, but I saw it in your notes that you're going to show the bibliographic evidence, like how many manuscripts we have.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is point number 2, right? So this ancient text that we have, how do we know it wasn't just horribly corrupted, right? Because it's old. And so we look at, what evidence do I have that it wasn't horribly corrupted? Because there's a lot of people that argue that way. In fact, one of the biggest arguers of that was Bart Ehrman, who's this university professor with these New York Times best-selling books like Misquoting Jesus and The Orthodox Corruption of Scripture, right? New York Times bestseller. So very influential. And yet, because of what we'll briefly mention here, because of the bibliographic evidence, the amount of surviving manuscripts we have, you've got that same guy saying there's no doctrine of Scripture that has been changed.
Okay.
Same guy. Interesting, huh?
Yeah.
And so why does he say that? Well, it was kind of like what you pointed out when you compare the surviving manuscripts of the Bible with other ancient documents. And you say, okay, I'm going to look at several factors here. I'm going to look at how old, how far after the events was this manuscript written? Right, so you're looking at that.
Yeah.
And you see these big swaths of hundreds of years in some of these other ancient texts, like Homer's Iliad and the writings of Aristotle and Plato and Livy and Tacitus. Then you look at the New Testament, and even the latest datings say that the writings of the New Testament were only 50 AD to 90 AD. That's really close to the time of Jesus's life and the things that are happening.
Yeah.
So you don't have a lot of time for the corruption of the story. This would be like if you have World War II vets writing their story down before they're gone. And you have several of these. So it's like having several World War II vets write about Pearl Harbor on the same event. And you've got all these different stories that you can cross-reference and say, is that what really happened? And then you can start to think, oh man, my gospel writers are writing like that. Paul's writing like that.
I love that that example or that comparison, because it puts it into something that all of us, we've all seen that news story with that World War II vet, or maybe we know somebody who survived something like that, and you hear them talk about it. But what an interesting way to look at the gospel writers being like four different, observers of that, or even participants in it. That's awesome.
Yeah. And that tells you that you're getting different perspectives on the same events, which sometimes people go after the variations of their writing. Like they pointed out how many people were at the tomb, or were there this many women or that many. And then they say, hey, you can't trust the Bible because these guys reported things differently. Yeah. And actually, there's a great book on that by Jim Warner Wallace called Cold Case Christianity, where he is a detective, as a cold case detective. That means these have already been shoved in the back room. They're old, and all he's got is manuscript evidence and the former pictures and writings about what happened on that case. When he starts digging through it, he's looking for things like, he does not want to find that they exactly match the stories, because that would mean collusion. They all got together, developed a story. So now you've got a conspiracy. He's looking for those differences. Well, this guy saw a person in a hoodie and he was 5'10", or that person says he was 6'1". That person didn't see the guy in the hoodie at all, but still describing the robbery or whatever. So he's looking for variations of report. That's another thing that tells you can actually trust the reports, is that they're not exactly the same.
Because it was a human observing.
Yeah. So that's another, like sort of a reliability check. Oh, there's so many things, Gabe. I don't even know where we should go.
What would be interesting to me is, you were off on this like mission to try to basically be able to reject faith without probably feeling bad about it, I guess. And so then you run into, enough reason to change your mind, I guess, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm just kind of curious if you wouldn't mind giving us a little more insight into what that was like for you.
Oh, goodness. So I would say you have to kind of know, coming into Christianity, I was drawn through like great beauty of the Northwest and sort of the awe and wonder that I experienced at the heavens. My dad loved cosmology. So, and I kind of was looking for, how do I know what is good and true? You touched on that in your sermon when you brought up epistemology. Woohoo! Yay!
I was looking for a fancy word to throw in.
Yeah, good. I loved it. So I was wondering, how do I know what's true? And why do I get so heated when I think things are unjust? And why do I so strongly believe in right and wrong and good and evil and these kinds of things? And my search, just to put it in sort of a short form, my search ended with somebody witnessing to me. And that witnessing was giving me a Bible and saying, when you go off to college, you have hard questions. I hope you'll turn to this. And so began to read the Bible, and it was putting the check marks on all of those things, like, oh, this is the source of the beauty in the world that's designed. It makes sense that it's here. And here's the source of good. And that makes sense that there's evil when you walk away from what's good. And, all these sorts of things. So in college, I actually became a Christian.
That's a little different, isn't it?
Yeah. I was searching for these answers. Yeah, it is a little different. We're worried about the kids going off to college and losing faith. And not gaining it, right? So the hypocrisy of the Christians, when I got into church, threw me on that whole, like, wait a minute, I thought this would be the people seeking goodness, truth, and beauty. And I found a lot of people seeking their own self-interest. And, they could quote a lot of the Bible, but they weren't really living it out. That's what threw me into this search, because I said, wow, I'm not really liking what I'm seeing. And I don't just mean that lightly. It was really, I'm giving you the Cocoa Puff version of it, very light version. But that was what thrust me into trying to figure out, what's true and what's good. And can I trust this Bible? And so coming back around to like Bible reliability, I started to see, going back to the bibliographic evidence, that not only was the Bible written in closer in time to when the events happened, but we also have, like, the oldest surviving copies are super close in time to the time it was written. So you get one of the oldest pieces of the Bible is from 100 to 150 AD. And by the time you get to the 300s, we have surviving full Bibles, right? Like, I don't think a lot of Christians know that there's a full manuscript of the Bible from that time frame. So that's really close in time. And then on top of that, the Bible has more manuscripts available for cross-referencing than any other ancient text. And I don't just mean kind of has more. Yeah. I mean, it blows everybody else out of the water. I saw in your notes that you had the Greek copies that survived, which are around 5,745-ish that may be updated now. But there were also 10,000 Latin copies. And when you throw in all the languages, you have 24,000 copies. So what we've done with this is, and we being Christians who study the New Testament, they're cross-referencing all of those copies for accuracy.
Right.
And when somebody like Bart Ehrman, that scholar that says the Bible's horribly corrupted, when he says, look at this textual variant, we got scholars today that can say, I'll show you where it came from. It came from this language in this time in this line. You know, this scribe messed up. He spelled this word wrong. He changed the order of the words, and then they can show you where it comes from. So the amount of evidence that the Bible's reliable to its origin, like its original writing, was overwhelming me. And then I found out if we had no surviving manuscripts, you could piece together almost the entire New Testament from the million times it was quoted by the early church fathers.
Interesting.
So you just pull from their works. They quoted it all over the place. So that was impressing me. But maybe we should take a little bit of a philosophical angle.
Yeah. Okay, let's hear it.
All right. So I tend to lean into philosophical apologetics when I do stuff. So I think like, okay, why would God give us a Bible? Right? Why? So when I look at if there's a God being that exists, I have to think about, well, what is that like? What is God like? And one of the things is whatever this God being is like, it created. So it willed something into creation. It had a will. It intended. That tells me it has personhood. It's not just an essence. Sorry, I love Star Wars and the Force, but it's not just an essence. Right? Even Star Wars has the wills for those of you who go really deep. So, yeah, that's right. Nerding out today with Gabe.
Okay, all right. We got big words. We got Star Wars. Yeah.
That's the way it goes. So this being has a will. That means he has personhood. If he has personhood, then there's an aspect to his existence that's relational. And if he creates something like us, other relational beings, there's going to be that aspect of our engagement with him or our existence with him that is relational. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to make a jump and assume that means he wanted to communicate to us about who he is or have relationship with us. So what did he make? He made languaged beings. Mm-hmm. Right? We're languaged beings. So how we communicate is through language. So it really made logical sense to me that he would give us his word, and not just in written form, but he knows we're relational beings. So he brought the word in incarnational form. So like our best way of getting the word is human to human.
Right.
And that's exactly what he did. He's the incarnate Son, Jesus Christ. He came as the Word made flesh. So not only do we have the written word, but we have incarnate, second person of the Trinity, communicating to us and giving us who he is and what he's like and what we're here for in human language. That's
beautiful. Yeah, I love that. It is fascinating that Jesus is called the Word, isn't it?
Yeah. There's all of the it's not all the reasons, but I wanted to share, there's some different angles there about how I see the Bible. Like I see it as something that God would have done because of how he made us and how we think, how he made us to think rationally and logically and gave us the ability for language so we could communicate. So he uses it to communicate to us.
Yeah, yeah. So what do you think is at stake for people in deciding their view of how much authority a book like the Bible is going to have in their life?
Ooh, what's at stake? It's kind of everything.
Okay.
Because you're developing your view of the world. When you as an educator, I know that very between 0 and 3, people tend to get their worldview, but then you develop it. And you learn it, and you learn about who you are and who's out there in the world, and what does it mean to exist, and what is life for, and what is purpose and value and meaning, and how do you get it, and where does it come from, and where should you invest your time? And the Bible actually talks about all of that. And it helps you to understand who you are in Christ so that you can engage others and be a part of the human community, and love others as you love yourself, right? Jesus said to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. The Bible helps you do that. And then to love your neighbor as yourself. And I think that's part of like what is so important about the Bible. Humans aren't very good at loving their neighbors as themselves. Not at all. Like we tend to not do that. And so here's Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount saying in Luke 6, love your enemies. What? Yeah. No. They're not me. They're not like me. I don't like them. They don't agree with my point of view. So I don't have to be nice to them. I don't have to love them. Love your enemies. Because when you don't do good to those who persecute you, when you don't do good to the people who disagree with you, you're no better than anybody else. Everybody, he said, even the sinners can love those who love them.
Right.
You don't have a choice. You have to love everyone. So that's me paraphrasing Luke 6, everybody. That's not what's actually written there. So go read it for yourself. But that is so important. That teaching should frame how you see every single day of your life, your spouse, your kids, the people at your job, the people who you politically disagree with, the people who are out on the streets. It's how it informs everything in your view.
Yeah, it does. I agree with what you just said, and I also just have just a little bit of a compassion for people that are, really wrestling, really honestly wrestling with this issue, because for many people that I know, they would view this as just like a very narrow kind of, piece of history that got passed down and maybe in some ways needs to be corrected, right? This viewpoint that there is a holy book. And I understand in some ways where my friends that see it that way, where they're coming from. And so but I'm so convinced by having looked at the evidence myself and, and experiencing in some ways like the power of belief in God's words, and then the promises that have come true in my life, that I'm an evangelist for this, obviously, but but then there's this sense that I can't wait for others to also have that experience, because there's something so confirming and so comforting about realizing that there's something that's absolutely true. Yeah. In this crazy world.
I'm glad you have a heart for that, because that's one I wrote for I think it's called the Lausanne Project, which is the World Congress on Evangelism. Mm-hmm. And my subject matter was, I wrote with a guy in Nigeria and a guy in Japan as well. And our subject was challenges to objective truth. So I think what you're noticing is years and years of philosophy and teaching tearing down that there, and we're going to use some big words again because I need to, but that there is external reality outside of my mind to which I have access and can know. So there's been, it probably goes back behind like Kant and all those guys back towards David Hume. I don't want to saddle him with that, but that's been developing over the last 400 years. And so now we don't know that we can know anything at all. And that's kind of one of our primary objectives as Christians, is to talk about there is a God who has given us a rational mind to be able to know him. And that means we have to be able to know reality outside of my immediate mind. We have to know what's true. If you can't know anything at all, then you can't just not know God. You can't know scientific facts. You can't know anything. And we don't live like that. We don't live like that's true. We do believe there's a way to send astronauts up to space that's objectively true. and matches this external reality that if we don't pay attention to, we'll actually kill them, right? We won't do the right thing. And yet we keep questioning, is there anything I can know about myself? What can I, like the philosophical things, the theological things, we've been taught that there's no truth to them. But I'm not sure why we would separate those out and say there is no truth when we know truth is just hard to find.
Mm-hmm. Well, those are fascinating things and a great challenge here at the end to not be hypocritical about the way we treat truth and compartmentalize it. So there you go. That's probably one great takeaway. Do you have any others for us? For those that are sincerely seeking in this, really trying to nail this down, what steps or ideas might you recommend?
Well, first of all, I would say that's great. You should keep seeking and keep looking because I believe that God made you with a rational mind. And so those questions, that seeking, those are good things. So I just want to emphasize that for people who are listening. I would suggest listening to, find an apologetics podcast that you can listen to. Like there's the Stand to Reason Ministry guys. There's Mama Bear Apologetics. You've got, if you want a little higher level, William Lane Craig's Reasonable Faith podcast is excellent material. And there's a lot more. John Lennox is one of my favorite guys to listen to. I'll listen to anything John Lennox. He takes the hard concepts and he brings them down. And if you're wondering who's John Lennox, he's an Oxford mathematician that has been a Christian since he was very young. And he's a great defender of the faith. And when I say defender, I don't mean aggressively engaging people. I just mean giving you reasons to believe and talking about why he does. So I would actually, first place I might send people is to a website in the UK called bethinking.org.
Okay.
Because you can write, he'll say, what are you thinking about? And you say, why is there evil in the world? And then you type that in and then it will pull up written audio and video posts and it will place them in order of difficulty. So beginner, intermediate, and advanced. Yeah. Wow. And you can also go to my website, maryjosharp.com, and I have a list of resources to get you going. So those are good places to start.
Yeah. Thank you so much. That's great advice. And I just appreciate you taking time to dialogue with us as I think we all want the same thing. We want to know what's up and how we fit in. And so my prayer for all of you who are watching and listening is that will happen for you in the way it's happened for me, in the way it's happened for Mary Jo, that God will meet you where you are. And I want to just invite you to do a couple of quick things. One is, would you like and share this content? We would love to get the word out, get more people around the concept of hope. And you could be a big instrument in helping that happen. And then secondly, would you pop by a Westside service sometime, maybe even this weekend? You could do that online at westsidecommunitychurch.com or in person right here at our campus in the Portland, Oregon area. Either way, we'd love to see you soon. And thanks again so much, Mary Jo, for joining us today.
Hey, thank you for having me on.